We love hip hop.
All right, man. We back at it. It's your boy Friday Ricky Dread here with another interview for your head top. And today I have the pleasure of having an artist and somebody who's been doing a lot of different things, but somebody outside of Toronto, like who we regularly be interviewing over here at the podcast. He's representing Edmonton. He's done a plethora of things as far as like rapping. He's an activist. He's done stuff in radio. He's documentaries, a plethora of different things under this man. He's a man of many hats, let's say. I would like to welcome to the We Love Hip Hop podcast, Arlo Maverick to the motherfucking building, man. Welcome, brother.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So talk to me, man. You got the Juno rap committee. You're part of the Juno rap committee. Can you tell me a little bit about that and like what that entails?
Yeah, of course. So with my role as the Rap Advisory Committee Chair, I essentially work with the team that we have of 10 individuals who are working to make sure that hip hop in Canada is represented, basically acting as a liaison from the hip hop community to the Junos. We essentially try to make sure that we are creating awareness because sometimes the process can be a little bit tricky for certain people. We also play a role in helping suggest possible judges. We also play a role in suggesting possible talent for the award show in addition to the gala. And work with the Junos to make sure that the eligibility is something that reflects the needs of the Junos as seen with this recent year. There were some changes that we had wanted to have in place, and so the Junos felt that and respected what we had put forward, so we've changed that.
Okay, so just to continue our conversation, I'm not going to ask you to repeat the question again. We can fix that in audio. You're in Edmonton,
Yes.
okay? And I'm so used to interviewing Toronto rappers and stuff like that. Can you tell me, like, were you born and raised out there?
No, I was actually born in Toronto and raised in Edmonton. Spent a bit of my childhood as a baby in Jamaica, but Edmonton's been home for the rest of my life, though.
Okay, so being born over here in Toronto, what prompted the move? Like, I guess your parents moved you guys over there, type
Yeah,
shit.
I didn't have a choice. But I do love Edmonton, though. Yeah.
And how old were you when you moved there?
I was like maybe 1 or 2 years old. So I was young.
Yeah, so you didn't have like time to become like a Toronto man and then like move over to Edmonton.
No.
So break down the population to me, like, because I'm super ignorant to it, bro. I passed through there one time, but I didn't even have enough time to take in the culture. First, just for us as Black people, what's the breakdown of the Black population? Like, where are we coming from? Is a lot of African countries, people coming from the States, West Indian countries? Like, talk to me.
Well, here's the thing. In the last maybe 15 or 20 years or so, it's been more of people coming from the African diaspora. But prior to that, it was predominantly West Indians. As you may or may not know, Socrates spent a bit of his childhood here in Edmonton because Edmonton has always been a place that people come to for work. It's a port city, and with it being a port city, people come here for work. And when they come here, they bring their customs, they bring their culture, so on and so forth. And so we've had, I recently just did a documentary about West Indian cricket here in Edmonton, and it was something that was going on from the 60s up until the late 90s, early 2000s, when it switched over to being more of a Pan-Asian thing. But as it relates to Black culture here, like we have our own Caravana type festival, which we call Cara West, and in Calgary, which is 2.5 hours away, they have Cara West. We have Cara West, they have Cara Fest. We have events you guys have during August long weekend. That's when your Caravana takes place, but we have a thing called Heritage Days, which takes place a week before our carnival takes place. And so that's just a multicultural festival that takes place in this park. Shouts out to Junior T, who came down and spent like 10 days out here just like soaking up the culture, and he was surprised by how many Yadmen were down here because again, trades brought a lot of people here, work brought a lot of people here. That's what brought my family here. And so with that, there was a generation that came that was like old school, like Jamaicans. Well, they weren't old school at the time, but old school Jamaicans, old school like Bayesians, so on and so forth, Guyanese. And their kids end up becoming the kids that get attached to hip hop. One of the documentaries that I worked on a few years ago with my partner, Inda by Natalie, was about the breaking scene in the 80s. And I'm assuming you're familiar with Click.
Yes.
So Click is
That's
originally
my
from
homie.
Edmonton. Yeah. So he's originally from Edmonton. Him, Dart Malone, Roger Mooking. So those guys were essentially watching this whole hip hop scene cultivate when they were kids and end up becoming like hip hop MCs that end up impacting not just Edmonton but Canada as a whole. So we have roots that go back to the late 70s. So hip hop has always been here. It's just been more so a thing where it's you have to be part of the culture to actually realize how much of a thriving scene we have here. And even in current days, we have people like Arden, Forever Friday, Moraine, Kripo, who was on your podcast a little while ago. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things happening in the city here,
Yeah, man, that's dope. And just before we get into the hip hop stuff, because I'm very intrigued by just the culture of like different places outside of Toronto. And I know Montreal, I know Toronto well, I know Vancouver well enough too.
Yeah.
What I know from Edmonton is I had a homie, big salute to Tech Man from Empire. He moved to Edmonton for a few years to like work in like the oil rigs and stuff like that. Can you tell me about like the bigger industries that go on over there and like why maybe a lot of brothers might come from out of town to come work in Edmonton?
Yeah. Well, the thing with us is that the oil industry is huge out here. Whether you're working within Edmonton or possibly just on the outskirts of Edmonton in places like Nisku, and then further up north, that's where most people come to work, where you make like pretty much the big dollars, where your life is pretty much committed because you're living out in camps. And so a lot of that stuff, a lot of people basically migrate here because of the work. And once they have kids, all of a sudden, like they get stuck, and that's not stuck in a bad purpose or in a bad way. It's more so like no one expects to stay in Edmonton, but once you get here and realize like how cool of a vibe it is, you stay. Like we have multiple restaurants, like West Indian restaurants, African restaurants. Right now I'm wearing a Cadence Weapons shirt, and his father was one of the earlier pioneers as far as radio goes, because campus radio has always been big in the city, him and a guy by the name of Don Joyce. And so whether it's b-boying, whether it's graffiti, whether it's DJing, whether it's emceeing, like the culture of hip hop has always been here, like since the late 70s. And that's pretty much due to the fact that we've always had people coming here to work, and they're bringing that culture here. And even before that, much like Black people over in Halifax, we had African Americans leaving from the US to come here to be homesteaders and settlers, so on and so forth. So we've had a Black population here in Edmonton since the late 1800s, which most people aren't aware of because that history isn't being taught. But slowly but surely, that education is getting into the school curriculum. So it's a Blacker province than people think,
Interesting. That's so intriguing to me, man, because just like I love to just study the different scenes that are happening all over our country and expose it to the world. You know what I'm saying? Like I think the people are so fixated on Toronto that they overlook some of the budding scenes that are happening. Like, for example, we have the Toronto man accent. All right.
Yes.
From what the conversation I'm having with you, and even just the way I'm talking now, I'm not like and talking like a quintessential Toronto man. But is there an Edmonton accent? Discover Cans, where quality meets innovation. With over 24 premium strains, each carefully sealed in our signature cans for maximum freshness. We're redefining the cannabis experience. Trusted Canada-wide for consistency and reliability. We deliver the product you deserve. Elevate your expectations and explore the difference with Cans. You can find Cans on Instagram at @Cans_Canada, or you can find them on the Diamond Club page, Diamond Club_Ontario. Make sure to use the code WeLoveHipHop on the way out and get yourself a little discount. Salute to the sponsors. Cheers. Or a slang, at least.
We have certain slang words here, but it's not as pronounced or defined as Toronto is. I think that the thing with Toronto is that like you're looking at like going back, because I still have family in Toronto. I still visit out there, and like I'll hear the accent pop out, and I'll be like, wow, like you guys are definitely from Toronto, So we have certain words we use out here, and the thing I think the common tie with it is that it all relates to the West Indies, you know?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the slang you that is being used, because even when Cardi dropped Bacardi slang, like, and he was saying you don't know, like that's stuff that we were doing out here because of the fact that Jamaicans were here in Edmonton, you know, like there's been reggae parties going on here for years. And even just a little more history and context in regards to Edmonton, Maestro Fresh West's DJ LTD spent a lot of his younger years here in Edmonton, although he's originally from Toronto. So it's one of those things where the back and forth between these two cities is something that a lot of people don't realize that it happened a lot more often than we would think, you know? And just because everybody wants to get to Toronto because it's a big city, it's where the culture is, so on and so forth. But at the same time, though, the work opportunities are out here. And I think that for the longest time as Edmontonians, especially as Black Edmontonians, our thing was like, yo, there's no culture here. We've got to leave. And like, even like in surrounding cities, so on and so forth, the mentality was always to leave. And that's why people like Click moved to Toronto and other people moved to Vancouver, moved to the US. But I think because the internet has changed things, in addition to that, we also have more resources being put into the city for people to realize that you can build something here. And even what's crazier is that you being from Toronto, if you were to come here, like Trix, the comedian, he came down here a couple of years ago and he's just like, yo, like Edmonton is a vibe. And like, I think sometimes we don't see it because of the fact that we are here. And when you get the opportunity to go to other places and see like the things that we have commonalities, just like, yo, like, why are we taking this for granted? Because people will come in from other parts of the world, like the UK or possibly from Nigeria or whatever, and they'll set up shop and they'll start winning because of the fact that they see the opportunities that are here. But sometimes when you're in that city or that culture, you don't necessarily see those opportunities. So I think it's and I think that can be said for a lot of cities in Canada, you know, like obviously like we see the global rise of Toronto with Drake, the Raptors, Tory Lanez, so on and so forth. And I think that probably made a lot of people appreciate Toronto more than they did when Cardi or Chaclair or Socrates or Chaos or any of these guys were doing it in the 2000s, or even Ghetto Concept, because at the same time, at that point in time, they'd seen it as it's just Toronto, but it's like, no, you have something special there, like embrace that. And we see it now, you know, so hopefully other cities in Canada can adapt to that, you know?
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And as somebody who's originally from Montreal, you're right, because I seen it back then before Drake blew up and stuff like that. I used to look at Toronto from like my vantage point in Montreal, like, wow, they all made it. Like when I used to see Cardinal and Socrates and IRS and all those guys on Much Music, I was like, they made it. They must be like driving in Ferraris and shit.
I think all of us did, because I think that the power of Much Music, and shouts out to guys like Greg Baptiste, G Wonder, who like did so much of that programming back in the days, because he allowed us to see like our icons in a way that made us think that they were like mega stars. And it wasn't until years later that a lot of us realized that they were maybe a couple notches like above like some of the other artists that may have been in our city. But at the same time, though, I think that one thing that was more pronounced back in those days was the fact that like the resources were scarce, but at the same time, though, like the people who had the resources were so resourceful with them that it made it seem like they were larger than life, you know, because you look at what Little X was doing with music videos back then, and it's just like, it's crazy, because like these weren't big blockbuster budgets, but he made them look like blockbuster budgets, you know. So yeah.
No, salute, man. And you know, before I get even to the rap scene again, because again, I got to tell you, what should I call you, Arlo or Maverick? What do you prefer?
Arlo.
Right, I got to tell you, Arlo, bro. The scene, just like learning about this area, just is intriguing to me, right? Over here in Toronto, though, right, we have just to get into like maybe a social conversation. We have like, I would say, covert racism when it comes to certain things, getting jobs and stuff like that. They won't call you an N-word to your face, but they just won't give you the job. How does that present itself over there in Edmonton? And I know it presents itself in some way because there's a predominantly, or you know, there's not that many black people, but there's predominantly a lot of white people there.
Yeah. Well, the thing was that our city is a lot more diverse than people would know. We have Filipinos out here, we have Chinese out here, East Indians, so on and so forth. A huge Latin community as well too. As it relates to racism, yeah, it's there, you know. And the thing about it is that it's not to say we don't have allies, because I have a lot of white friends who are just like, yo, like, we're not dealing with this, so on and so forth. But I think that the tough thing with Canada is that in the US, as we have seen on many occasions, it's very blatant, you know. And Canada is known for being polite about their racism, you know. And I think that we have to find ways to combat that. And also, I think the biggest thing is that, like, most people aren't really exposed to our culture, right? Whether you are like, there's certain things that I grew up eating that my white friends, like, they come up to the house and like they get some of it, and like, and my mom's cooking and stuff like that, and all of a sudden just like, yo, like, this tastes good. You tell them what it is, just like, are you serious? You know. But the thing was that the more they're able to interact with our culture and actually understand it and realize that different doesn't mean deficient, as once was quoted by a pastor, then they begin to realize that, okay, we do have commonalities, we do have similarities. And I think that when you are able to grow up in environments where people are able to mix and mingle, then things begin to change. But it can be just a situation where things are changing because people want to be able to listen to hip hop music, because hip hop has done a lot to create integration. But at the same time, though, like, those people who are listening to hip hop have to be able to like use their platform to also speak for us in other terms, because if not, then you're just part of it because you enjoy the beats, you enjoy the lyrics, so on and so forth. But when we do see injustices, we do have to speak up about it. And I do think that here in Edmonton, like, I have been called the N-word before. I have like seen racism. And what I think was frustrating is that when you try to express to people like, yo, like, this is why it was racist, for certain people, if they don't feel it's racist, then it wasn't racist. And so just be like, all right, you don't get it, you know? And so you're not part of this, you're not part of my inner circle anymore. Because the thing about it is that if you're able to hear me out and not be able to understand what I'm trying to say and still trying to dismiss it, then we're not really that cool, you know? So,
yeah, we're not reading the same books. we're not on the same page, basically.
Definitely not on the same page.
Talk to me about the rap scene out there, man. Okay. Humbly, right?
Yeah.
Because I know, as an artist yourself, I'm gonna ask who's the biggest artist. You might say, "Yo, it's me, nigga. Come on."
Yeah.
Right? But in your humble opinion, who's the biggest artist out there in Edmonton right now, you think?
If we're talking about the biggest artist, then I have to give it to Arden. Are you familiar with Arden at all?
No, talk to me about him.
Okay, so Arden is, I'm not sure if he still is, but he was affiliated with TDE. He actually had a chance to tour with, I think it was Isaiah Rashad across the UK, like Europe, and also the US, so on and so forth. He does really well streaming wise, but he's an artist who actually like has bars, you know, but at the same time though has a bit of melody within his raps as well too. So he's like, he treads that line so well, and like when you hear him rap, it's just like, okay, this guy's an MC, you know. So if I'm looking at it in the sense of like a guy who's kind of checking off both boxes, because I think we're in an era now where streaming can people listen with their eyes, right? And sometimes listening with their eyes, they're missing out on a lot of great music because they're like, okay, this doesn't have enough numbers. Why am I listening to it? Which is the complete opposite from the era that we grew up in, where it's just like we listened to the music and then we wanted to support it, you know? But if I'm looking at an artist that's able to balance both, I would say that Arden is that guy, you know? And we also have Forever Friday, who's putting out stuff. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
I am.
Okay, yeah. And then artists like Moraine, K Riz, Sincere, who else is there? Moto, who's an artist who's coming up. A guy by the name of Tommy Lemaire. I feel bad because I know I'm gonna forget people that'll be like, yo, you didn't mention my name, dog. You didn't mention my name. But then we also have our pioneers as well too, you know. I Touch from Dangerous Goods. The Maximum Definitive, which is Click Soul Group, you know. groups like Peep Game, groups like Darkson Tribe. Like, we have a history, and what's fascinating is that with the work that I'm doing right now, I'm trying to ensure that these stories aren't lost, because I think that as Canadians, we don't do a good enough job of preserving that history. And if we don't do it, like Shad had that documentary, Hip Hop Evolution, which I think is an amazing documentary. But where is the equivalent as it relates to Canada? We have a storied history, like from Nova Scotia with MCJ and Cool G back in the days, to the Rascals when they were the Ragamuffin Rascals, to the Maxim Definitive, to Mood Rough, to Ghetto Concept, and like all these like different artists who have like created to this whole tapestry of what we consider to be Canadian hip hop. And I think that we, in our conversations about what's happening now, we can't forget the people who created those situations, like even people at Much Music like Master T, and as I mentioned, G Wonder, Oliver, like all these people who were keeping hip hop alive at a time period where we may have taken it for granted, that the fact that we could sit down and watch like hip hop artists, Black artists on TV, like sharing their music, you know, like, yeah, it's Canadian hip hop to me is so amazing, because there's like so many great stories. And that goes across Canada. And I think that, yeah, so I kind of veered off your question.
No. Also, just to add on to what you're saying, because I gotta represent for the street culture too. There's different guys who like DBX2. He's over there in Edmonton as well. He's from Toronto originally as well. And there's somebody else that he does songs with. Let me just give me a quick second. Let me just look him up quick fast. DBX2. I think it's Money Mitch. He also has songs with him out there. So there's a lot of guys who are from out there who are also representing like the street side of things, like the, for lack of a better term, drill music and stuff like that. What's that scene like? I know you're not in that scene. You're not a drill road. You don't come off like a road man, drill man kind of guy. You know? But like, are you familiar like with some of what's going on and like the ups and the downs too, not just the music part?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm not as tapped in as I once was. I did campus radio for 13 years, and when you're in campus radio, everyone's getting new music. Like they're like, "Yo, I need you to play my song. I need you to play my song." So at that point in time, I was a lot more tapped in. Now, yeah, I'm not as tapped in as I should be, you know. And obviously, that's where things like this come into place, because when I begin the campaigning for the Junos and so on and so forth, and that's when I'm like having people reach out to me and be like, "Hey, like, what's the process?" so on and so forth, or someone telling me, "Yo, have you checked out this artist here?" And I think that that's one thing that we don't really have as a country, in the sense of like even if you look at some of the playlists, like the Canadian hip hop playlists, like a lot of them are more centralized to Toronto, because most of the people who are curating these are connected to that. But something that would actually allow us to like be more informed about what's going on across Canada, because like we have a very like large and vast country, but our population is small enough that we should have a lot more awareness about what's going on, you know. So that's my bad.
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. I'm super tapped in as far as like the Toronto drill scene and all that type of stuff, but the issue that I have with it, and I'm making a documentary as we speak, is the fact that like it eats its own. So as like some of these artists gain mad attention, mad views on YouTube and stuff like that, before they can get to any kind of a promised land, they end up in jail, or they end up, God forbid, like passing away. Is that a thing that you see over there too, or is that just more of a Toronto thing?
At one point in time in our city, there's been a few years where we've been a murder cap, just based off of our population. And there's been a lot of street politics out here, a lot of violence. The early 2000s, I lost a lot of friends just because of those things there. And I've never been involved with that stuff. I've always tried to be that person who encourages people to like use their talents, whether it be emceeing, DJing, whatever the case may be, because hip hop can change your life, you know, in a positive way. And so we have seen situations like that. It's not as bad as it used to be. There are things still happening, but compared to what was happening in the early 2000s, it's night and day, you know.
Good. And talk to me about radio, because you did radio. When I was doing my research, or from what you sent me, also I seen 11 years, but you said 13 years, man. That's crazy.
Well, I was at the station for a longer period of time where I was hosting with another gentleman, and then my actual show was only 11 years though. So
okay.
Yeah. But,
so talk to me about the show, man, and like what you guys used to get up to over there at the radio station, man.
Well, the station was CJSR. The show was called the Urban Hang Suite. I'm a huge fan of Maxwell. He's an R&B artist, but I think that he's an amazing artist nonetheless. And so I named the show Urban Hang Suite. And so the whole idea and vibe behind the show was that people could come in and just like, it would be like an opportunity to just hang out and talk music, And so there would be, my focus as far as the music goes was predominantly like Canadian hip hop, but I'd mix in the bigger artists of the day, because I always felt that if we have just a local set or a Canadian set, then people are going to tune out. But if we mix in, let's say, a Kanye, a Jay-Z, whoever the artist is that's big at that time, with other artists from the city and across Canada, then now people are just like, they like the song because they're hearing it in context with songs that have a similar vibe to them. And that's what a DJ does, right? The DJ is supposed to break music and introduce you to it, but he's got to be creative. He or she, I should say, has got to be creative in the sense of how they actually deliver it to the audience. So then that way the audience doesn't see it as like, what is this? It's more so like, okay, like I like this. I want to hear more of this, So so I was a huge advocate for playing Canadian content. I was also a huge advocate for allowing artists to come up and like tell their stories about their albums. If they had a show coming up, we'd be announcing the shows, and we had interviews upon interviews, which was really dope still, because like it gave artists the opportunity to actually have someone speak critically and do a deeper dive into their music. So whether it's like talking about a particular song that they have or a concept they have for their album, or how the campaign is going, or they just wrapped up a tour, like that was a big thing in the sense of giving artists that platform. Because when I look at, again, people like Master T, or even like the DJs from New York or whatever, that like Hot 97, so on and so forth, like to me, like how they were able to document hip hop history, but also tell the personal narrative of those artists was so important. And I think that we need that, because there's a lot of artists who I may have not understood their music until sitting down and listening to an interview where I'm just like, yo, like, I want to know more about this artist. And I think that part is missing from music nowadays, because we hear music through streams. So we're just hearing the songs, but those stories behind it, I think are so important. And you've been doing your thing in regards to like doing documentaries on artists. And I think that that's great, because when we're able to know the backstory, then we become bigger fans of the artist. And because sometimes it's not just the lyrics or the beats sometimes it's not the lyrics we're just relating to. Sometimes it's like knowing that artist has gone through this struggle, or they're of this background, or grew up in this one area, so on and so forth. And then we see ourselves in those artists. And the only way we can do that is by knowing the deeper story. And sometimes a song is not enough,
Yeah. And I appreciate also the compliment. And I also try to do that through my interviews as well. I look at them as like a time capsule. So like people could look back later on and find out the whole history of the whole Canadian music scene via interviews and documentaries. So we're on a mission over here, man.
No, 100%. And the cool thing about it too is that like when you think about it, if a journalist is trying to find information in regards to an artist, and you have an in-depth like interview with that artist there, that's gold to a journalist, because now it's just like, okay, cool, like I'm getting this backstory and so on and so forth. Especially if you're an interviewer who really knows how to get people to open up and be as honest and vulnerable as possible, then it makes it so that the next person who does an interview with them can get that information and begin to flesh out that story of who that person is even more so, because we all are playing a role, whether it's minor or major, in the sense of telling this overall story that makes the average listener want to be a fan of Canadian hip hop.
Yeah, that's facts. I watch interviews to do interviews all the time. Trust me. Talk to me about the food drive, man. You've had the food drive going on for 11 years plus, the hip hop food drive.
I want to take a quick break from this episode to give a big shout out to Only Loud, Canada's one-stop shop for your favorite legacy brands and all things loud. Only Loud provides mail order delivery nationwide and same-day delivery to those in the Ottawa area. Check them out at onlyloud.ca or follow them on their socials, Instagram at onlyloudcanada or on Snapchat onlyloud.ca for more exclusive content. Only Loud is not just a product, it's a lifestyle. Big salute to the sponsors. Cheer!
Yeah, so Hip Hop or Hunger was an initiative that we had in Edmonton. We thought about bringing it back, and we are hopefully going to be able to bring it back sometime next year. But for 11 years, we basically put on a hip hop showcase that pulled out like a hell of a load of people to different venues, and we had it at. So the initial year that we did it, we didn't know what to expect. It was the first event we ever threw. And we had people showing up to the event who were bringing more food than what their ticket price was. Because what we did is that we said that ticket price is this without a non-perishable food item and this with a non-perishable food item. And there were people who were coming with loads and loads of bags of food. And like the great thing about that is that it reflected how at that point in time when that was happening, that's when a lot of violence was happening in our city, and it was connected to the hip hop community. And so it showed who we really were, because the unfortunate thing is that when we don't control media, then media can often paint us in a certain way. But when we show up and that same media that painted us one way now says, okay, we were wrong about them, then that's a great thing. And so with this event, year after year, it became like the Super Bowl of Edmonton hip hop, because we had like the giants of that time period, like on stage performing, and the place would be packed. We had b-boys, we had DJs, we had graph flip. We just it was amazing still. And so but it just got to the point where it was just like a lot to put on. So unfortunately, we had to take a step back from it, and we didn't expect to be taking such a long step. But yeah, we do plan on bringing it back, because it's one of those things where there's a whole generation that's not even aware of what this event meant to the city and what it did for the city. Because in the beginning, we had like MC battles, and whoever won would basically get a trophy. We built a relationship with the food bank where they were able to see the importance of hip hop in the city, because I think a lot of times when you're a local artist, you don't realize the impact you could have on a larger scale. But to have people coming out to see these hip hop artists, and especially because of the fact that this was like the best of the best, it changed the perception of the audience, who now had confidence in their music scene and were buying CDs at the time, buying merch, and so on and so forth. But it also allowed for the artists to realize that these are the type of shows we need to put on. We need to step our game up. We need to level up, because sometimes I think with hip hop, until we see it, it's hard to believe. And that's why we have to have people who are coming through and being like torchbearers and like doing things that don't seem possible, because then things change. And even around the same time in our city, even a little bit earlier, like we had people who were pioneers like Don Joyce, who were doing things that allowed us to see what was possible, like working in media, like putting on events. And then we had artists who were like going out on the road and touring at that same time. And so even like going back to 1991, we had rappers from Edmonton who had music videos on Much Music, so it's like, I bring that up because of the fact that I think that you need to have people who are going to be trailblazers, even going back to Click, and I got to give Click his props still, because his group won a Much Music Video Award for their song Jungle Man, their song and video Jungle Man, and got a Juno nomination for that song as well too, and that's in 1993. So it's like the audacity for someone from Edmonton to assume that they can do that is crazy, but it can be done, and that can be done all across Canada. I think that we need more people that are willing to be those trailblazers.
No, that's real talk right there, bro. And listen, I gotta give a salute to Click. This is the second interview I've done in the last 48 hours, and different cities. So big salute to Trent Out Loud over there in Montreal. And he had multiple Click stories of him intertwining with Click along the way too. So it's like this guy's just interwoven in everybody's story, bro, myself included. So I gotta holler at him and get him on the show.
Yeah, Click's interview would be crazy because I back when I did the Urban Hang Suite, I did 2 interviews with him, and they were just so informative because he's done so much, whether it be the Stylist Awards, whether it be Remix Project, whether it be A&R for Universal Music Canada, his time at BMG. Like Click is a foundational character in the story of Canadian hip hop. You know?
No, for real, for real. So we're here. Let's bring it full circle because, you know, as being part of like the rap advisory or rap music advisory for the Junos, right? One, how do people how do I put this question? How do we get more pressas and like, you know how I mentioned like DBX2 or Casper TNG, like I'll stick to like the Caspers and the presses and them because the numbers are there like crazy, millions of views and stuff like that. However, I never see them at a Junos. I never see them invited. What's the deal with that, bro?
Okay, well, the crazy thing with the Junos, and there's a lot there to what you're asking. First, if we look at the process for how it's adjudicated, it's 50% consumption, then 50% judges, right? And so consumption is streams, YouTube, so on and so forth. There's an organization that does that for CARIS, which is the governing body of the Junos, and it tabulates that. So you have 50% of the judging based off of that. Then we have 10 people who sit down and listen to the releases, and based off of that, because there's 2 categories. There's single, and then there's album/EP, right? And so they'll listen to all the submissions that come through, and based off of that, they'll select their top choices, and then that gets tabulated, and all of a sudden we get the 5 nominees. From the 5 nominees, then it gets open to all CARIS delegates who get to have a vote on the category, and then a winner is announced at either the gala, which happens the day before, or at the award show that we see on TV. You know, now the gala is something that everybody could basically attend. It's just a matter of like purchasing tickets to go see that. And there's a dinner, there's performances, there's like photo ops, so on and so forth, where the following day, which is the award show, is typically at an arena where we see the big televised thing, and so on and so forth. And so as it relates to an artist like a Pressa or a DBX, the biggest thing is to apply, you know, put in your submission for an application. And I know that Pressa has, if I'm not mistaken, has been nominated in the past, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to double check that. I do think that he has been nominated in the past. And I think that with that, the biggest thing is that, and this is where those who are out there watching this right now could also play a part in it as well too, is that if you feel that you have the time, which is the most important thing, outside of the air and the taste and the expertise as far as being a judge, you can be a judge. If you go to the Junos website, they are currently accepting judge submissions, and then CARIS, which is the governing body, will make the decision on who the judges are, and we don't know who they are, right? But our role, again, as it relates to the Rap Advisory Committee, is to provide them with suggestions, and then the more qualified the judges are in the sense of, again, having an expertise and also being balanced in what they listen to, because if you have someone who's more of an old head, then all of a sudden now it's just like they're going to want to vote for the artists who are like, that don't sing, that have no melody to it, so on and so forth, then they might miss out on a gem from an artist that has a little bit of melody, you know. But then you also want to have someone who's not just looking for the melodic rappers, because while that is the future and current state of Canadian hip hop, we can't forget about the artists that actually have those bars that are like well thought out and just like really dope lyrics, you know. So it's a matter of finding like the right balance where, if we have the right judges and have consumption in place, because that's the thing, there's a lot of those artists that their consumption numbers are ridiculous, you know,
crazy.
So, but I think the tough thing is that you don't want it to become a popularity contest. And I think the unfortunate thing, and this might be a broader conversation to have, but we don't have things like the Stylist Awards anymore, right? Outside of, okay. Gonna get possibly controversial here, okay?
I'm down for controversy. Let's go.
here in the province of Alberta, we have an Alberta Country Music Awards, and they could have just Alberta artists in country have an award show that has multiple award categories. Publicists, managers, entertainment lawyers, everybody shows up to this thing, and it's a successful night, right? Then we have the Canadian Country Music Awards, right? So we have and I'm not even sure about the other provinces. I just know about that we have one here, right? But what I'm trying to show is that if country can have its own provincial award, its own national award, and then still have a Juno category, still have a Western Canadian Music Award category, still have a YYC Music Award category, still have a Sask Music Award category, still have a East Coast Music Award category, then we have to ask ourselves, why do we not have our own hip hop show, hip hop award show? Because I think that one of the things is that these opportunities help celebrate artists, right? And in some ways it can make or break your career, but the thing about it is that when we're relying strictly on one, the Junos are great, right? But let's also start having a conversation about what does it look like having something, whether it's the Stylist Awards coming back or possibly something to the equivalent of that. So then that way we can celebrate our own, and our own within this culture can then use those awards to then leverage opportunities to possibly get a look at the Junos. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I feel like there was one thing that you left out when you were listing out some of the stuff for the Alberta Country Music Awards: sponsorship.
Yes, no, and that's and I apologize for leaving that out. Here's the thing: a lot of these things, they have sponsorship, they have the support.
Yes, and I mentioned it because I want you to go and expand on that, please.
Now, here's the thing: we don't have the infrastructure here in Canada for us to be able to have those things. I know that when Click and those guys were doing the Stylist Awards, like they were able to pull that off, but that took a lot of work, right? And that took a lot of funding, right? And I think that one of the things that we have to start doing is figuring out ways and we have a lot of talented people within this culture from across Canada. And if we're finding ways to have those conversations to actually get to that point where we can say, okay, how do we leverage a sponsorship from just me thinking off the top of the head, like let's say Budweiser and Staples and all these other places and stuff like that. The problem is that those places are, while we have the consumption numbers, we don't have the backing and the support of the industry itself for those things to become kind of like just a given, right? It's a given that you want to support a country music award for Alberta, right? Why is it not a given for you to support a country hip hop award for Alberta? And that's because radio is not supporting it, right? And there's grant funding, we have access to that, so on and so forth. But once you get the music done, like where are the outlets? Where are the publications? Where are the playlists that are curating like Canadian hip hop or Canadian reggae or Canadian whatever? So then that way it can actually have a home to go to, and then those things could actually build platforms that we could all benefit off of, because at the end of the day, like, so 2 years ago, I was at the Western Canadian Music Awards, and there was a thing put on by Breaking Down Racial Barriers. Shouts out to Ian, Andre Espinay, and Click. And the conversation was had in regards to essentially the Black music ecosystem in Canada, right? And some of the failings of some of the organizations to support. And one of the things that was brought up, because that year it was the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and they were providing the Rascals with an award, right? And when we look at the history of the Rascals and what they were able to do back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, a light bulb should have went off in a lot of corporations' heads, in the sense of saying, if these guys are doing this with the little resources they have, what if we put a little bit of more money behind them, right? But that's never happened. For whatever reason, it hasn't happened, right?
Yeah.
Then we look at Drake. Drake pulled off the impossible with next to no support from Canadian, like the Canadian music industry, right? That should have been a light bulb that went off in people's heads, in the sense of, what happens if we put more money behind it?
Mm-hmm.
The Weekend, Nav, Belly, Tory Lanez, the list goes on, right? Of artists who have actually done something without the support, the full support of the Canadian music industry and ecosystem, right? And infrastructure. And yet for some reason, there has not been a push to say, how do we increase the support that we provide to them? And it's not a matter of asking for handouts. And I think that that's what people often confuse it in the sense of, well, why are you guys asking for handouts? Give us the same resources that you give to country, rock, and pop here in Canada. And I guarantee you things would change. And the reason why I know it will change and the reason why you know it'll change Friday is because we've seen it happen with artists who did not have the resources, from Choclair, Socrates, Cardinal. And we're talking about artists who are like 2 decades ago, right? Then we fast forward to what was happening in the 2010s. We fast forward to what's happening now. Like, we keep doing the impossible with almost nothing, and it's never gone off in anybody's head. What happens if we put money behind this? What happens if we actually create the infrastructure for this thing to succeed? Because if you look at it, so much of our artists are having success in the United States of America, and they say, well, it's only going to work in the US. It's like, well, where's this stuff coming from? The biggest artists in possibly every genre for the last 15 years is from Toronto. So if he's from there, what else is from there? And if he's from there, what is in other parts of Canada, right?
Yeah. Listen, man, I'm down. I would say even just do it from a greed standpoint. If when it comes to the industry, like, it's easy money. It's money in the bank, right? Like, if you can see that how much money, if you invested into somebody like a Drake, how much ROI that you got off of the Drake investment, just do it for the greed aspect. I'm gonna make a shitload of money off of these guys.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We still win. We still get to change our families' lives and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Because it's and don't get me wrong, there are organizations, like in every single province we have what are called music industry associations. Here in Alberta we have Alberta Music, and I've worked with them over the years to help them with their Black History and programming. I've worked with them over the years to introduce them to more of the hip hop community and find ways of getting us in the system. And I've been on their board, so on and so forth. So there is the part that we have to play in the sense of realizing that these resources aren't specific to rock, country, pop, folk, or anything like that. It's for Canadian musicians. So the more that we get involved in these systems, like, keep in mind, like, I'm a guy from Edmonton, Alberta, okay? And shouts out to Click, who brought me on to the Rap Advisory Committee years ago. And once I got in, I'm just like, okay, I'm beginning to understand how this thing works, right? So then I can then give those gems to people from my city and people from my province, right? But in addition to that, like, being on there, now I get the opportunity to, like, introduce a guy like Jay Devonish to artists who are out here. I get an opportunity to introduce people like Kyle Craft. Well, Kyle's like pretty much connected with everybody, but I get the opportunity to really be a flag waver for Edmonton and Alberta hip hop. And I think we have to be more involved, because there's the part that they're not doing, but there's also the part that we're not doing. And it's not to say that none of us are doing anything, because a lot of people who are again, those trailblazers, those people who are like knocking down the door. Like, there's a guy out of Winnipeg by the name of Nigel Weber, who recently, a year ago, released a book about Winnipeg hip hop history. If you get a chance to read it, because you'll be blown away by the amount of history that's in there, right? And we have to play that role, because I think the unfortunate thing is that we are looking at what's happening with other genres, and we know that it's unfair. We know that the fact that there are more resources put into those things there's more opportunities, but we have to say to ourselves, okay, if we know this is how it is, let's do what we need to do to make sure that we can change things and shift things around. Because if we're waiting on them to come through and recognize what we're doing, like, it's never going to happen. Because again, we have a documented history of Canadian hip hop artists, even R&B artists, who have had the talent, and no one came in. So then they had to say, okay, we're going to do this on our own. Most of the labels that we saw these artists coming from, whether it be Capitol Hill or Knee Deep or Figure Four, these were people who knew nothing about the music business, but said we're tired of hearing no's from people who won't recognize the fact that we are just as talented or possibly even more talented than our counterparts to the South.
Yeah, no, that's real talk right there, man. And you just to get to the closing of our conversation, because we've been cooking for like almost an hour here, man. We grooving over here, man. Talk to me about grant writing, man, because I see that you do grant writing too.
Ready for the road.
Roll Ready Detailing, now open 7 days a week from 8 to 5 p.m. 750 Oakdale Road, Unit 66, specializing in ceramic coating perpetual with warranty, PPF, tints, wraps, vinyl wraps, and hand car washes. Remember, we clean anything on wheels.
Roll ready, ready for the road. Oh,
Man, that's a very essential job for us over here in this hip hop industry. We need more grant writers.
Yes, we do. We do. And I've spent a lot of the last few years teaching people from the hip hop community, just the Black community as a whole, how to write grants, because it is a skill. And I think that sometimes people are afraid of getting that rejection, right? And they offer workshops, like a lot of grant organizations offer workshops, because at the end of the day, they want you to get the funding, right? Because it allows them to then go back to their funders and be like, hey, look at all the applications are getting approved, so on and so forth. So I think that one of the things that we have to do is not be afraid to not know the answers, and not be afraid to show up and be the only rapper in the room who's asking questions, right? Because at that point in time, the person who sees you asking questions is just like, okay, this person showed up, they have an interest, they care. Let me see if I can help them out. The first grant that I ever wrote years ago, I went to school for marketing. And so I understood how to create marketing plans, understood publicity, so on and so forth. But I was so afraid that they weren't going to understand hip hop that I didn't submit this grant that I wrote. And we funded the whole project. So it was going to come out, right? And then we're working on our second album. This is with my group Baltic Live. And the gentleman who had began mastering for us was a white dude by the name of Uncle Skippy. And he's like, why don't you submit a grant? I'm like, man, they're not going to understand the music. He's like, you never know, right? And so he basically looked at the grant and helped me tweak it to the point of it being successful. And from that point there, I'm just like, yo, we can all get grants. And so here in Edmonton and just Alberta as a whole, we have organizations like the Edmonton Arts Council. We have organizations like Alberta Music. And so we have a lot of grant funding out here. And so my whole thing is that teaching people the differences between a grant like Factor, which looks more so at the business side of music, and then a grant like the Canada Council, which looks at the artistic side of music. And so having that understanding of what the mandate is and also what's required for it makes it easier. But the best thing that hip hop artists can do is start your grant and then go to an organization and the grant bodies and say, hey, do you mind looking over my grant? And they'll give you feedback on what you could be doing with your grant. Because I think I had a conversation with someone earlier this week where they were saying that they see a lot of artists who may not have the best music. And I try not to be a critic of people's music. I try to let people find their audience, but they were looking at it from the standpoint of how come these artists that may not necessarily be good as this artist here are getting funding. And I'm like, these people have understood how to get the grants, and so they're applying. So I said, let me teach you guys how to get the grants, and that way you could be applying. Because whether you're a drill rapper, whether you're someone who's like a Shad, who's doing more cerebral type hip hop, or you're just someone who just wants to have fun and party and make songs for girls, there's grants that are available for you. And these organizations also want to show that they are being diverse in the types of genres they're supporting and the types of artists they're supporting. So I think it's, we have so much funding here in Canada, and even out in Toronto or Ontario, you guys have Ontario Arts Council. You guys have Factor.
Ontario Creates. We just got a grant from Ontario Creates the other day. So I know.
Thank you. Congrats.
I
But
take
hey,
advantage of the system as a podcaster.
but does that mean you're now a grant rapper though?
No, I'm a grant podcaster.
I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you.
Once upon a time, I was like outside of the grant rap category, I guess people would call
Yeah.
because it was harder for us. But even
Yeah.
back when I was managing Empire back in the days, we would apply for grants and stuff. I wrote up a couple myself, but
Yeah.
over the years, I got with a cool grant writer. Right. Salute to my homies Matt and Paul who helped me with the grants and stuff like that. And they've been able to get me one from Factor as well as from Ontario Create. So having a good grant writer is definitely important, bro.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And I think that understanding how to write them on your own, once you understand how to write them, then if you don't have the time, you'll know how to get the materials to the grant writer to make their life easier. And I think
Yes.
that is something that as artists we have to try first, because once we understand how to do these things, then we can basically step back and essentially just oversee people, whether it's our social media strategist, whether it's our manager, whether it's our grant writer, whatever the case may be, just understanding these roles, because the more we understand them, the more we know whether someone's doing the right job or if someone's not doing a good job at all, you know? So, and yeah, just with grants, like artists should be applying, like apply and seek feedback. And another thing too, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there are certain grant bodies, including Factor, where you could actually apply to be a jury member, and seeing the behind the scenes, because I think a lot of times people don't fully understand what is getting their application denied, right? But when you begin to see behind the scenes, you're like, okay, well, this person here, like, I'm not understanding who their target audience is. I'm not understanding what their plan is. They don't have a fleshed out plan. Then you begin to look at your grants and you're just like, holy, like, this is why I wasn't getting funded, you know?
Yeah.
One of the initiatives that I came up with a few years ago was to do these things called mock juries, where you could actually have a panel of jurors going over grant applications in real time with actual people. So then that way, the people who are concerned about or don't have their fears about grant writing can now see, okay, this is what the process is. Like, they just played a demo and the jurors said that the mix wasn't good or whatever the case may be. And it's just like, okay, I need to make sure my mixes are straight. This person here had mentioned the fact that the marketing plan wasn't realistic. The budget wasn't realistic. And when you begin to hear these things, you can now go back to your grant and be like, okay, I remember these were the points that they brought up. How am I going to make sure that my grant application doesn't fall flat because of these things here, you know?
Yeah, no, that's you have to preparation, you know what I'm saying?
100%.
Last couple of questions I have for you here, man. As somebody who's been over in Edmonton, you've been able to study the scene for a plethora of years, man. You know, I think you have a very good read on what's going on across Canada.
Yeah.
Can Edmonton produce a Drake level type artist?
Drake is Drake, man.
Yes, but we also got the Weekend too out of here. So
okay, yeah, that's fair. I think that we can. I think that here's the thing. I think that the environment is, we have talent, and I think that we can, but it's going to take a lot of work, and I think that that's what people don't see with a Weekend or a Drake or even Tory or anything like that. Like, the sacrifice that you have to make to be on that level, and there is a bit of selfishness that comes along with that as well too, right? In the sense of being so hyper focused that you this is what you eat, sleep, and breathe, right? And then you also have to factor in the team that's around you. So I think that with those three things in place, Edmonton can definitely produce that. I think that there's having the opportunity to travel across Canada and see hip hop in different environments. I do think that there's a lot of artists who have that. But it's a matter of, again, that work ethic, your team, and the talent is there. But if you don't have those things in place, and even, like, your team is so critical, and having the right songs, because some people are writing good songs, but are great songs, right? And being able to take that criticism to know that, you know what, like that's good, but how do we get it to that next level, right? And I think that, yeah, no, I think it's more than possible. I think it's more than possible. I think that we have a scene that is ripe of individuals, and I think another thing too that needs to be in the mix as well too is just that knowledge. The more we understand, and again, this is where podcasts like yours come into play. This is where the internet comes into play, and all these people who are trying to educate artists in regards to like this is how you have a successful career, right? Because if you have the right team around you, but you're creating problems and putting roadblocks in their ability to help you progress, then you shoot yourself in the foot and you don't get to where you need to be. And we've seen a lot of artists do that, which is really unfortunate, you know?
Yeah, a lot of people get in their own way, man.
Yeah.
Last question I have for you, man. As
Okay.
somebody who's done, I feel like you've done it all in this music game, bro. Like you've been an artist, you've been part of a group, solo, you've toured across Canada, you've done a bunch of like documentaries, activist, everything that you've done, you know, grant writing. What do
Yeah.
you think is your biggest accomplishment?
Wow. Wow. Friday, you should have sent me this question before. It's like prepare. Wow. Honestly, I think mentorship has been my biggest accomplishment. The knowledge that I've been able to pass down to certain artists who have been able to take that and just run with it. An artist like Moraine, who has, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's an artist I've seen. Okay, perfect. I've seen him like go from just being a little kid at like these all ages hip hop shows to having songs with artists, then like touring and like going across season, and even returning that favor in the sense of coming back and saying, yo, Arlo, like, yo, here's this link, connect with this person here, you know, and having that come full circle. Because I think sometimes the relationship between your mentor and mentee can begin to shift after a while. And as it begins to shift, you might be in a place where you're able to help out the people who helped you out. And most people don't do that. They just keep going, right? But when those people are leveling up, but then saying, okay, I want to bring the people who helped me get to where I need to be, like that to me is a beautiful thing. And so I think that my biggest impact and my biggest contribution would just have to be mentoring, because there's so many artists who I've given game to where it's just like they've taken that and they've like not everyone puts it into place like they should, but those who have like like even you're familiar with Creisha Turner, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay, she's one of the people who I mentored from when she was just starting out, and like she's one of those people who would take things and like if you gave her an assignment, she's running with it and she's making it happen. You know? So it's like to see that happen, like and I think that if you're an artist out there listening to this right now, if you have an OG that is looking out for you, like realize that doesn't happen enough. So appreciate that, because there's a lot of people in this industry who have gone through the ups and downs. And then instead of them saying to themselves, like, yo, like, let me find someone else who I could pass this knowledge on to, they'll see an artist struggling and just let it be. So I've never been that type of person. There's been people who looked out for me when I was coming up, who provided me with the gems that I needed, like next to Vandal, whose little cousin Fabian and I were in a group together. So things like that have always meant a lot to me, because people who saw something when there was nothing there to see and gave me those gems, like I've got to pay that forward and make sure that I return that, so then there's a generation that doesn't have to go through the same obstacles that I went through, you know?
Yeah, man. Arlo did that, so you ain't got to go through that, man.
Is he Hope in the back there?
Touche. Yo, man, Arlo Maverick in the building. I really enjoyed this conversation. I felt it was fruitful. I feel like the audience is going to be able to get a lot of information from this. And I really appreciate what you're doing over here for us in the industry, man. Not only for people in Edmonton, but for across Canada, man. You're an inspiration, bro. And thank you.
No, thank you. Next time I'm out in Toronto, I'll make sure I hit you up, man. Because yeah, it would be great to like connect with you in person, and yeah, let's maintain the link, because at the end of the day, like, there's a lot of opportunities I'm trying to create to make Canada smaller, because there's no reason why you being in Toronto and having the knowledge that you have and the connections that you have aren't present in a city like Edmonton or Calgary or Winnipeg, like passing on those gems and being able to mentor, just being able to come out here just to see what the scene is like, because we know so much about Toronto, but it's now time for Toronto to realize what the rest of Canada has, because once we start realizing that we have like a national network and we start plugging in those networks, I think that we'll have a national scene that can be unstoppable.
Hey man, I'm down, and I think this is the creation of the bridge right here. So we'll definitely link up in the future and make something happen, man. Yeah, man. Arlo Maverick in the building. Big salute to the sponsors that you might see pop up on the bottom of the screen when I do the re-edit for this, man. But yeah, man, make sure to hit that like button. We are off of this, man. Deuces. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out these other videos on the screen and make sure to like and subscribe.
We love hip hop.